Hello and welcome to Local Edition. I'm Leslie Leyton. Well, in the final hours of the legislative year, state lawmakers sent a raft of bills to Governor Jerry Brown. And here now to talk more about that, which ones passed, which are still pending, is Donald Wagner. He's an assemblyman in the 70th District. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Leslie. Glad to be here.
What are some of the standout bills that did pass?
Well, let's see. There's one that changes the initiative process in the state of California that's currently sitting on Governor Brown's desk. Don't know whether he'll sign it or not. But what it does is it moves initiatives that typically would have been voted on in June off to the November ballot. We opposed that in the Republican Party simply because it seemed like a cynical effort to game the system to us. It also put off a very significant bill that had been negotiated in the last round of budget negotiations to create a rainy day fund, and the people were supposed to vote on that. Now that's not even going to come up until November of 2014, and we think that that's too long out for us to try to do what we need to do to get our financial house in order.
Well, some people say moving it off to November is to the advantage of Democrats because more Democrats come out in November as opposed to June when more Republicans come out.
Well, I think that in this case that's probably true because the Republicans expect to have a contested primary in June, whereas the Democrats will not. And then in November, President Obama will be on the ballot. And so this election cycle, I think that that is the case. But this is a bill that applies, forever theoretically, and, it could work to the advantage of the Republicans later. So my opposition to it was simply that it's changing the rules in the middle of the game to give a temporary advantage to one side over the other. There's no reason that we can't have elections, in June, put our initiatives there. People can vote on them or not. In November, people can vote. Why crowd it all into one election? Was my opposition.
Another bill a lot of people were watching was the Amazon tax bill. Where does that stand and why is it important to us?
Well, it's very important to us because it's a significant amount of money that conceivably comes into the state coffers. The problem is that there are some very real federal constitutional issues, and in fact there's a federal Supreme Court decision that says the state of California cannot do what it tried to do. Where that stands is in the very last couple of hours of the legislative session, a deal was worked out between Amazon and a lot of the brick and mortar companies that had supported the tax in the first place that I think is a good compromise and gives everybody some time that they need to go find a solution at the federal level. And that's where the fix needs to be because, as I said, there is a U.S. Supreme Court opinion and federal constitutional issues. They're going to try to resolve it at the federal level, and the state, I think wisely, is going to step out of that for the next year or so while a solution is found, hopefully.
Okay, the legislature passed the budget, the state budget, on time this year because they had to. Correct. By law. But where do we stand right now with the budget, considering some revenues are coming in more than expected, but then we have other gaps to fill?
Well, the budget was balanced, and I put quotation marks around the word balanced because it assumed roughly $4 billion in revenue that I think were let's just say very optimistic projections. We are not going to see that entire $4 billion. Yes, you're right, there is money coming in above projections, but it won't be, I don't believe, at the $4 billion level, which is going to require the state to make a number of automatic cuts across a whole range of programs. The Republicans opposed those types of trigger cuts. We had a different budget that we had proposed. Nevertheless, what was voted on included the trigger cuts. My expectation is there's a pretty good chance the legislature will be called back into session to deal with both these trigger cuts and the shortfall in projections, but so far we haven't heard from the governor on that.
All right. Don Wagner, thank you very much for being here.
Leslie, my pleasure.
And thank you for tuning in. Stay with us. More HLN next.